Hi everyone, welcome. In this video, I'm going to talk about Ansible plugins versus module. Recently, someone had asked this question in one of our videos comment section, and they were not sure when to use plugins versus when to use modules. As such, I talked about Ansible plugins and modules in my previous video, but let's go through these again once more. Okay, so Ansible plugins versus module. First of all, we'll see the purpose of both of them. So if you talk about modules within Ansible performs a very specific task. For example, installing a package, copying a file, or managing a service, right? So like I mentioned in my previous video, they are basically your building blocks for playbooks. And essentially, if you technically think about it, modules are also a type of plugin. So there are different types of plugins, right? Callback plugins, connection plugins, so on and so forth. So within Ansible, module itself is a type of plugin, but because they are used so often and everywhere, mainly you would be using modules whenever you are working with Ansible, they are very famous, right? And then that's why we have this question, plugin versus module, right? So essentially, any specific task that you want Ansible to do, you would use Ansible module for that. Now, the second part, which is plugins, the purpose of plugins is to extend the functionality of your Ansible. So for example, your plugins can modify how your tasks are executed, how your Ansible is making connection to the remote host, or how you're managing inventory. So anything that Ansible itself is doing for you, and if you want to change it, that's where plugin comes to the picture. Whereas module is something that gets executed on the remote host, which is a good segue to our second point, which is execution. Modules run on the target machines, remote host, where the tasks are executed. So in my last video, I also explained this. Because Ansible is agentless, how does Ansible achieve automation, right? How does, for example, Ansible creates a directory on the remote host? Ansible will copy your module to a temporary directory on the remote host, run it with Python, and will create your directory structure, right? So basically that's what module is. It will copy that module to a temporary directory on the remote host and then will execute it to achieve the final result, which could be, for example, creating a directory. Whereas plugins are executed on the control machine, which is your machine where Ansible is actually running from, your master node. So you see the clear difference in terms of execution that also hopefully helps you understand the difference between plugins and modules. The next thing I wanted to discuss was usage. So again, I already explained about it. Ansible modules are used within your playbooks to define the action that you want to perform on the remote host, target host, right? Whereas plugin is used to customize or extend the existing behavior of Ansible itself, such as logging, managing inventory sources, and I talked about it, right? Modifying how the tasks are executed, right? So that's what your plugin is. And if you think about the types, modules includes your core module, like for example, copying a file, copy module, APT for installation of packages, services to manage the services on the remote host. So there are so many different modules, as well as some custom modules that we can create if we want. Plugins are also, there are different types of plugins. For example, callback plugin, connection plugin, inventory plugin, lookup plugin, action plugin. So there are lots of plugins by default that are provided by Ansible, similar to modules, which are also provided by Ansible. So if I open this link, so here I've opened this link. As you can see, there are so many different types of Ansible plugins, right? We have action plugin, become, cache, callback. And when we do hands-on demo later on, I'll try to use, for example, callback plugin to demonstrate how we can write our plugins ourselves. We'll see the difference between a module and a plugin there. So we have talked about the purpose, execution, usage, and now types in terms of the properties of Ansible plugin versus that of modules. Development, that's the last point that I wanted to discuss. So modules, they're typically written in Python, but they can also be written in a language that can return JSON. So essentially any language that can return a JSON, you can write a module with that. Plugin must be written in Python because they are extending the capability of Ansible core, which is itself written in Python. They follow a little different interface and integrated differently into Ansible's execution process because they're changing Ansible's core functionality, whereas modules is basically an executable code or script that will be transferred to a remote machine and will be executed there, right? So slightly different in terms of development. In today's hands-on demo, I will be creating a custom plugin on my machine, and I will show you the difference between module and a plugin. So let's move to my terminal screen. Okay, so on the right side, I have my target machine, and there is nothing here right now, right? So what I'll do is, in today's demo, I'll first try to show you a module which would be copying a file from my local machine to the remote machine. So that will be an example of a module. And then later on, we'll see how the plugin is different from module. Okay, so let me create a directory for today's demo. Let me open my VS Code here. Okay, so I've opened my VS Code in the same in this directory, and let me create a file. So this would be our main playbook that we want to create to demonstrate the difference between Ansible plugins and modules. So let me dynamically first add our demo host into the inventory. So that will be running on the local host, this first task. And so I've created this first task. Basically, I don't want to have a static inventory. I want to have a dynamic inventory, and then it's also complaining about the FQCN. So I had a typo there, so let me fix it. So this is the first task. Basically, I'm just adding a host dynamically into my inventory. And now my main playbook will start, which is, let's just call it copy module. So let's just create a task to copy a random file from my local machine to the remote server. Let me set the mode, and this essentially it is, right? Now let's see what it is complaining about. It's not okay. Okay, so this is now our playbook where we are dynamically entering a host to our inventory, and then using the copy module to copy a file from my files folder to a remote server in this location, right? Now in my folder, I don't have the file, so let me create that folder first, files, and let me create a file called myfiles.py. And I'll just say so this is my file that has print hello there, please subscribe to my channel. This is file on my machine, and my Ansible task is basically copying this file from my machine to a remote server in this directory, right? And what is that remote server? Which is basically, that is the server which is part of demo group, and the server name is demo1. Okay, so this is a simple playbook. Let's try to execute it. So in our terminal on the right side, let me move to temp demo directory. Right now, if you see, I don't have anything in this folder, right? And now if I do on the left side, we have this copy module.yaml is our playbook. And let me just run it Ansible. And meanwhile, let's also just create a empty inventory for .ini file so that it doesn't complain about inventory. And I'll just say Ansible playbook copy module -i, which is our inventory.ini. Let me fix this. And now it's running, right? So essentially what it is doing, it's basically the first play was to add host to the inventory, which is it has done. And now the task for copy module, it's copying the file to the remote server. And let's see what happens now. So the task is complete. It has changed one thing on the demo1 host, and that's our summary of the task, right? On the right side, if I now do ls, you see my file.py is there. And if I cat it, right, this is the same file that we had copied earlier from my local machine, which says print hello there, please subscribe to my channel, right? If I cat it again, right? So that's the file that we wanted to transfer. So this is simple Ansible module. So what happened here, right? Ansible used this Ansible built-in copy module to copy the file from our local machine to a remote server. This is an example of a module. Now, let's say we want to enhance the Ansible's capability, and I really don't like, or probably I want to have a message here before the playbook is started, and when another message at the end when the playbook is finished. So I'm going to use callback plugin for that. So if we go back, the callback plugin, it enables adding a new behavior to Ansible when responding to an event. For example, by default, the callback plugin controls most of the output you see when running the command line programs, right? So that means using the callback plugin, we should be able to control or change this output behavior, right? So we want some custom message at the beginning of the playbook and some other custom message at the end of the playbook. So let's try to write our plugin to enhance the capability of Ansible core. Essentially, because no module can do that, right? Module is something that we run on the remote server. So a task, for example, copy module was a module, but it's not going to change the way Ansible is showing logs to me, right? So to achieve that, I'll have to use plugins, which by definition says that you can use plugins to modify the capability of your Ansible core software. So let's do that. Okay, so first of all, what we need to do in our main folder, we have to create a subfolder called callback plugins. So we have files where we kept the file. Main folder contains our YAML file. Then we have an empty inventory file. This is a VS Code file, temporary file created by VS Code. Now we want to create a folder where we can store the callback plugins, let's say, for example, right? Okay, so now let's create a file called custom callback.py, right? So this is our custom callback plugin that we have created inside the callback plugins directory. So now whenever you're writing a new custom playbook, you have to import a file called callback base. So what we're going to do from ansible.plugins.callback, we are going to import a callback base. So if I hover over it, it says this is a base Ansible callback class that does nothing. New callback should use this class as a base and override any callback methods that they wish to execute custom actions, right? So this itself doesn't do anything, but this gives you that basic functionality or access to enhance or change or override the callback methods. So what we'll say, okay, we'll say class. That's the class we want to override, right? Class callback module, and then we use the callback base there. We don't need this, so we'll just remove this. Okay, let's just declare some variable. So let's just call it callback version 2.0. Callback type is notification. Callback name is custom callback, right? So that's the variable that we are, oops, I have a typo there, declaring. So now let's create a function for playbook startup, right? So the function is v2, and I will show you where to find these methods online also. But if you see VS Code giving me all the options here, right? So playbook on start, playbook on play start, on notify, so many things, right? We want to use playbook on start method here. We want to basically print a message. So we don't want this. Let me remove this. So let's say we want to print a message, self._display. What do we want to display in the screen? Playbook is starting. So let's say just my playbook is starting. Okay, so this is just a simple message that we want to play, right? So that's basically overriding the playbook on start method, right? And now let's just create what happens when the playbook ends. So v2_playbook_on status, or on stats basically. So on stats is basically when the playbook ends. What do you want to show with your stats, right? For example, if I go back in this one, right? So when we were showing the stats currently shows that what are the hosts that were in my inventory, how many files were changed, and so on and so forth. We want to also make sure that we display a message here that playbook has finished. So what we're gonna say, we just want to say display dot, this is my playbook is finished. So this is very simple callback plugin. What we have done is we have used the default callback base to override the display that we want to display before on start and or at the end of the playbook when the stats are shown up. Okay, so that's it, right? So that's what we need. We have created this callback module. We have modified the on start and on stat methods to display some additional stuff along with whatever it is doing by default, right? So we want to just say my playbook is starting and my playbook is finished. So let's go back to our terminal and let me run the playbook again. So now this time, if I run the playbook, I should see those two additional methods messages, right? So right now you can see here, right? So now it says my playbook is starting. That was shown before the playbook was executed. And now if you see at the end of the playbook, my playbook is finished is printed, right? Now also if we want, we can also, let's say started at, right? So this is going to show me the file name. So let's rerun this, right? So my playbook is starting. I'm now showing which playbook is currently being executed, right? So it's copy module.yaml. So let's say if you have 10 or 20 workflows running and you want to see in the logs which one is currently being executed, you can use this, right? In the method for stats, there is no object attribute file name. So probably when the playbook is already ended, we might not have this. So anyways, so let's go to developing plugins documentation. And we'll just go to callback plugin. So if you can see here, it is also mentioning, right? You have to basically import the callback base class from your Ansible plugins callback, and then import that and override anything on top of it, right? So if you see here, they are also giving similar type of example. Let's just say end time is, and we'll have to import. So self dot, we'll just say end time. So now let's run this. Oh, sorry about it. So I didn't import it correctly. That's why it says datetime has no attribute now. Let me fix it. I fixed it already. So let's just rerun it. So it's gonna run. My playbook is starting, playbook name, copy module. It's copying the module to the remote host, which is already there. And now see, my playbook is finished at this time, right? And we can also use the same here as well, right? So if you want, right? And then let's just rerun it. So our playbook started at 7:39, and let's see how long it takes, right? So we can use the difference and total time elapsed or taken for the playbook to complete those kind of things, right? So it took 15 seconds. If you see, the playbook started at 7:39:01 and it's finishing at 7:39:15. So again, this way we have used plugin to change the default capability of Ansible core itself, whereas the module was something that we used to remotely execute and achieve some tasks. I hope you got a little idea about Ansible modules and plugins and what is the fundamental difference between them. I hope you liked this video. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.